Welcome to Beyond the Lens, where history comes alive, and every documentary takes you deeper than ever before. History isn't just written in books. It's carved into ancient ruins, hidden beneath the oceans. For breathtaking this is a journey beyond the lens.
For centuries, the Great Library of Alexandria was the world's most concentrated repository of human thought. It was a place where kings provided the funding, scholars provided the intellect, and the building itself served as the ultimate vault for ancient wisdom. The library's collection included everything from Babylonian astronomical observations to detailed Egyptian engineering manuals. You can see the complexity of these records in this ancient papyrus, where columns of hieroglyphs document scientific observations. However, these fragile fibers were often the only place a discovery was recorded. If a scroll was lost, that knowledge ceased to exist. If you could open the doors to the library's history today, you would find the shelves completely empty. This loss is a tangible gap in our history. Thousands of original works vanished. Works of ancient medicine, detailed engineering manuals, and profound Greek philosophy.
That would not be recovered until long after the ancient world had fallen. Many people trace this void back to a single cataclysmic day. The popular story claims that Julius Caesar accidentally destroyed the library in 48 BCE, during a civil war in Alexandria. He set fire to ships in the harbor, and those flames jumped the shoreline, consuming warehouses that contained thousands of scrolls. However, modern historians doubt this event ended the library. The main collection was likely located well away from the waterfront, and evidence suggests it continued to function long after Caesar left Egypt. The truth is that the destruction of the library is a much slower, more unsettling story. Knowledge is rarely erased in an instant. It is far more vulnerable to the quiet erosion of time and indifference. The library's true decline took place over centuries. As Alexandria faced political instability and economic decline, the institution lost the royal support and funding it needed to survive. Religious upheaval in the late 4th century accelerated this process. During this period, pagan temples and the smaller libraries they housed were targeted for destruction, resulting in the loss of even more subsidiary collections. The magnitude of this loss is staggering. Hundreds of celebrated Greek tragedies survive today only as brief quotations in other books, and advanced mechanical discoveries were reduced to little more than titles. To understand the complexity of what was lost, consider the data found on surviving artifacts like this clay tablet. The intricate cuneiform writing recorded advanced Babylonian astronomical data, precisely the kind of scientific observation that Alexandria scrolls once protected. The institution ultimately succumbed to the slow erosion of neglect. Without the constant labor of copying decaying scrolls and the funds to support its researchers, the collection simply ceased to exist. While the physical building was failing, its ideas were finding new ways to survive. As Alexandria's influence faded, scholars carried copies of essential texts to other cities, effectively decentralizing the collection. Many of these scholars fled to other intellectual hubs. In places like Pergamon, the stone walls of local libraries became the new guardians of Greek science and philosophy. These texts eventually reached Constantinople, where the Byzantine Empire preserved them behind its massive fortifications for centuries. The Islamic world played a critical role in this survival. Scholars translated these Greek works into Arabic, as seen in the calligraphy surrounding this anatomical diagram, and then expanded upon the science for their own generations. By the time the physical library in Alexandria had vanished, its contents had already crossed enough borders to ensure they could never be fully erased. Centuries later, these preserved works returned to Europe, providing the intellectual fuel that helped ignite the Renaissance. Alexandria's most resilient innovation was its system of cross-border collaboration. It was the first place where Egyptian, Greek, Babylonian, and Jewish traditions shared one space,
allowing thinkers to openly test theories and critique each other's work. This collaborative model became the blueprint for the intellectual world we live in today. Every modern university, research institute, and public library is a direct descendant of the experiment started in Alexandria. In 2002, the Bibliotheca Alexandrina opened near the original site, serving as a modern reminder of the commitment to making knowledge accessible to everyone. The history of the library teaches us that physical objects, whether they are scrolls, walls, or empires, are inherently fragile. But the project itself continues. As long as we continue to archive our history, translate our findings, and ask new questions, the core work of Alexandria remains active. Picture a sealed brass sphere suspended over a boiling basin of water. Steam forces its way up through copper pipes, shooting out of angled nozzles and sending the entire sphere spinning rapidly. While it looks like a mechanical prototype from the Industrial Revolution, this device, known as the Aeola pile, was actually designed in North Africa over 2,000 years ago. The existence of a working steam engine in antiquity challenges the idea that the ancient world lacked the mechanical foundation for complex machinery. They already possessed the engineering and physics required to manipulate steam power. Before machines like the Aeola pile emerged, the brilliant minds working in Egypt, Greece, and Babylon were largely isolated. An astronomer in Persia had few ways to learn what a mathematician in Athens was discovering. The rulers of Alexandria recognized this gap and launched a radical state operation. They realized that by centralizing the world's recorded information, they could turn their city into the primary engine of ancient innovation. To build this collection, they turned their Mediterranean port into an information checkpoint. Every trade ship entering the harbor was stopped and searched by state inspectors. These agents looked specifically for written material. If they discovered original manuscripts, scrolls, or books on board, the library seized them immediately. This dense papyrus scroll shows the meticulous nature of the processing. Once a text was confiscated, expert scribes worked to copy every line and diagram by hand. After the work was finished, the library kept the original documents for its own shelves and returned the handwritten copies to the travelers. Over a few short decades, this systematic collection grew to an estimated 700,000 scrolls, creating the largest concentration of data the world had ever seen. Alexandria had moved beyond being a simple archive. It had become a massive, state-sponsored system for the rapid acquisition and storage of global knowledge. Inside the walls of the Mausoleum, or Temple of the Muses, this collected information was put into practice. The facility functioned as a university and research institute, where scholars could test and expand upon the ideas in the scrolls. This standardized Greek text demonstrates the library's role as a translation center. Scholars decoded manuscripts written in Hebrew, Persian, and Egyptian, translating them into a common Greek script. Large-scale projects like the Septuagint meant that technical and historical data from different cultures was no longer siloed. Ideas that had been trapped by language barriers were now accessible to scholars from across the Mediterranean. When Babylonian astronomical observations and Egyptian engineering and Greek mathematics were finally studied together, the result was a period of rapid scientific growth. Using this library of data, Euclid wrote Elements, which organized the principles of geometry into a system that still serves as a mathematical standard today. Eratosthenes used this environment to measure the planet. By comparing the varying angles of shadows at two locations and applying geometry to the sun's rays, he calculated the Earth's circumference. Over 2 millennia ago, his calculations reached a total remarkably close to measurements today. At the same time, Archimedes worked in the city, developing breakthroughs in mechanics and buoyancy that provided the technical framework for future engineering. Hero's steam-powered sphere was a product of this environment, an example of what became possible when technical ideas from different traditions were allowed to cross-pollinate in one place. Alexandria demonstrated that progress accelerates when cultures have access to a shared pool of information, rather than working in isolation. However, the library's full history remains incomplete. Ancient writers mentioned restricted rooms containing rare texts that were kept away from the general public. This intricate cuneiform tablet represents the type of complex, specialized data that might have filled those vaults, including advanced astronomical records or engineering techniques that were never widely shared. Because these rooms and their contents were lost to history, historians often wonder how many years of progress disappeared with them. If these scrolls contained unique discoveries, their loss may have significantly altered the timeline of human science. Just as this system for creating and storing knowledge reached its peak, political instability and war began to surround the city. The fate of humanity's greatest collection now rested on the edge of a crisis we will explore in Part 2.